Hello, and welcome to Conquering Finale. My name is Trinity, and this is the Measure Number Matrix. Today I'm going to show you a couple of Measure Number plugins that I think are really important and will really help you with some of these things having to do with measure numbers. Because as you know already from watching the first three videos, if you sat through all of them, that measure numbers are kind of complex. So some of these plugins will actually help this out a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into plugins. The first one I'm going to talk about is a JW plugin called JW Measure Numbers. Now, this is a third-party plugin. You won't have this installed in your computer automatically, but at the footer of my website is a link to the JW site where you can get this plugin. Now, there's a couple different sections here that we're dealing with, and I'll go through most of them. I might skip a couple things here and there just in the interest of time. But what I really love this JW Measure Numbers plugin for is helping out with measure maps where you're skipping measure numbers or adding A and B bars. This makes that process a little bit easier, so you don't have to do all that math inside the measure number region window. It's, as you saw in the first video, that can get kind of cumbersome and take some time. So I'm going to show you how to work with this to help that process out. Now, in the region section here, we have a bunch of different options that are going to initiate this process. The first is the actual creating of a new measure number region. Now, when you have a selection made, like I do here, I have bars 5 through 8 selected. When you apply the Create Measure Number Region plugin here, what's going to happen is it's going to turn measures 5, 6, 7, and 8 into its own region. And since that's in the middle of an existing region, it's going to split that existing region into two more regions. So, whereas I have one measure number region currently, when I'm done with this, I'm actually going to have three measure number regions. The first will be 1 through 4, the second will be 5 through 8, and the third will be 9 through the end of the piece. So, and the thing about this create is that you can choose what the bar number should start with here. So in this case, let's start over at bar 1 just to see what happens. And you hit apply, and you'll see off the bat 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it doesn't change the numbering here, right? So let's take a look at the measure number region dialog box just to see what's going on. And exactly what I said is that you see that now there are three measure regions instead of one. And here's the new one, region number 2, which is displaying starting number 1, includes measures 5 through 8. So that is the create aspect of it, sort of the most important part of this plugin, in my opinion. Now, the next two pieces here, join adjacent and inherent adjacent settings. These will work if you have at least one measure from each region selected. So in this case, I'm only selecting the second region here. So what I would have to do is at least select bars 4 and bar 1 here. And when you use the join adjacent region, then it'll join these two regions, and it will always use the settings from the previous region. So when I click apply here, you'll get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 because the numbering will keep going. And you'll see it happen just like that. Now, originally, or before I did that, I had 3 regions here, but now I'm actually going to have 2. You'll see 1 through 8 and 9 through the end, right? So even though that create split that and that join adjacent did that, that's what's happening. I could also do that here between 8 and 9, join adjacent, and so now I'm back to having a single region. Let me just undo that. There we go. The inherent adjacent settings works the same way. You do have to have one measure from each region selected at least. And this really just has to do with the visual appearance. So any position settings, enclosures and stuff like that, it's just inheriting the settings from the previous, from the earliest region into the next region. In this case, those settings aren't different right now, so nothing would happen. With the delete region, you do have to make sure that the entire region is selected. And in this case, if I just select these 4 bars here and I choose a delete region, you'll see the measure numbers go away, but the measure numbers on either side still exist. And you'll see that there's actually 2 regions versus 3 regions. So in that case, you do have to, actually have to have the whole region selected. And I should point out, actually, let me skip to the bottom section here, there is a select previous and select next. This is actually kind of handy. Whatever selection you have made here, if you choose select previous, what it's going to do is find the region and select the entire thing. And then select next will find the next region and select the entire thing for you. Select next, and that will select the entire third region. So, that's a really handy tool within the tool to help you deal with this, because a lot of these things either have to have full region selections in order to work, including the delete. So it's easy for me to just select previous, and it select that second region. So now I can go back and delete. The cover holes is kind of handy. So let me just go and manually change something in here. And in the second region, let's say this is bars 7 and 8 only, starting with 1. So now I actually have a hole in my measure numbering, 1, 2, 3, 4, nothing, nothing, 1, 2, and then back to 9 here. With this cover holes plugin, if I can get back here, measure numbers. With this cover holes, it will actually find the holes that exist in the region and fill them in with the previous region. So in this case, it's going to take that first region and extend it into bars 5 and 6, just like that. And it will tell you the 2 measures in the selection have been covered with extended measure number regions. So there you go, 1 through 4, 5, 6, and then back to 1 and 2. So that's handy as well. I find the best way to do that is you can kind of use that as a fail-safe. At the end of your process, just select all and try the cover holes. If there's no holes, it will just tell you that there's no problem. So at least you'll be able to solve some problems all at once like that. Now the next thing here is kind of handy too. This is the offset numbering. So actually, let's select one of these regions here. Offset numbering. This will offset the displayed measure numbers. So you can see that I'm starting with measure 1 and going through 6 here. But if I add, say, 3, then what will happen is it will start with bar 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, go back to 1 for this entire region. So this is really cool. It's an easy way to to change the numbers, and this could be negative as well. So if we go back to -2, it'll start with measure 2. And you can't actually go any lower than a result of 1. So with the measure number 2 here, if I were to try and go to -10, it's going to say, well, you can only go as far back as 1. So that's all we're going to let you do. So so that's the offset numbering. The offset location will actually change the location of the region itself. So in this case, this region that I have selected is bars 1 through 6, actual bars 1 through 6. If I wanted this region to apply to actual bars 3 through 8, I could do +2 here and make this region go to bars 3 through 8. Now you have to be careful because this can result in overlapping regions, and in fact it will when I do this right now. You can see that there's nothing here in measures 1 and 2. The numbering starts in bar 3 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I have overlapping measure numbers in these 2 bars here. So you do have to be careful about using that. That's also another way to deal with holes. You can cover the holes by extending them, or you can offset the location to fix something like that. All right, so that is the region section. It's really handy. We have all these options available to us, and it makes the task of creating regions a lot simpler. Now let's look at the manual edits for a second. And I'm not going to spend too much time here. The other plugin that I'm going to cover, the Patterson plugin, I prefer a little bit for the manual edits and the positioning. So I'm just going to gloss over this a little bit. But one of the first 2 here, I believe, are actually really handy in the JW plugins. So you can get your measure numbers all kind of out of whack sometimes. And it's really just easy enough to just select all and choose the remove positioning, and it will remove positioning for every single measure number in the selection. So that's a great way to, en masse just reset everything. Same thing as reset defaults. That's similar to the option when you right-click, having to do the reset defaults. It will just do that all at once for your entire selection. Obviously, you can only do this one measure at a time if you do the right-click like that. I'm just going to skip over a little bit the align to top and align to bottom. Just FYI, it only works on unlinked measure numbers, so it's possible to use these in your parts probably. But I find the use of these a little bit limited. I think the Patterson plugin is a little bit better for stuff like this. So I'm going to just slightly skip over that, but you can play with that. And for some reason, I don't understand the difference between the manual edits version and the positions version. So maybe somebody else has some answers about that. But let's look at the appearance. This is the next thing I want to talk about. So these options are sort of those options from the measure number region window over here with the style, the prefix, and suffix and everything. So we have control over that as well in the appearance. So what I can do is select this first region now, and if I wanted to, I can change the numbering style from the numbers to the letters, for example, and it will change this 1 through 6 into A through F, as you can see there. So that's really cool. And with the prefix and suffix, we can add prefixes and suffixes, and either or both if you want. So if I wanted to just add a prefix of 1 here, now all of a sudden that region becomes 1A through 1F, right? So that's a really great thing to do with that. Default font size, relative font size, font style. I'm going to just kind of gloss over this a little bit, but this will allow you to, reset the fonts for the score and the linked parts. You can change the font size. You can actually change the relative font size if you don't really know what font size you want to go to exactly. And all of these options have different scopes, so you can tell it to affect both the score and the parts, only the score or only the linked parts. Same thing with font style. You can change to the bold, italics, everything. You have that same, number style scope here as well. So, and then finally we have this options for diagnostics. And I mean, really, it's kind of simple. It doesn't really do anything other than tell you, you do have to have a selection made. So usually you want to select all, count regions. It will tell you that you have 3 measure number regions, find holes. It will tell you that there are no holes found, and find overlaps. In this case, it will tell me that there's no overlap. So it's just a diagnostics. You can use that as you want. Now, let me do this. I'm going to show you sort of how to, sort of a practical way of using this. So let me just reset all of this back to normal with one measure number region here. And I'll get rid of these other ones. Hang with me for a second. So I've just sort of reset everything back to normal. So what I'm going to do is show you how, for example, to turn these 4 bars, I'm going to call 4A, 4B, 4C, and 4D, and then measure 9 here is going to be bar 5. So this is really how you would do this. I think you know by now from the first lesson how to do this manually, but this is how you do it with a plugin. So first of all, we want to create a new region with these 4 bars, right? Starting number 1. Okay, and the next thing we want to do is go to Appearance, and we want the numbering style to be A, B, C, etc. Right, so again, we've got our A, B, C bars. We want to add a prefix. The prefix is going to be 4, apply. So now we've got 4A through 4D. And then the next thing we want to do is make sure that the next bar is bar 5, not bar 9. So I'm going to go back to the regions. I'm going to use the select next. That will select that entire region. And then I'm going to do the offset numbering, and I want to go back 4 measures. So, -4 here. That should take me to bar 5. So now I've got, just like that, it makes it that simple to, create a situation where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4A through 4D, 5, right? It can be slightly easier than doing it, the old-fashioned way, in the measure number region dialog box. So, that's sort of a quick, dirty lesson about this JW Measure Numbers plugin. So, all right, hope that helps. Now, the other plugin I wanted to show you today is a Patterson plugin. And the Patterson plugins is a third-party plugin, just like the JW plugins. There's a link at the bottom of my website. You can get to these as well. Now, there is a Patterson Measure Numbers plugin, and this will do some similar things to the JW plugins. I'm not going to spend any time on this today, but you can certainly explore this one if you want. Just out of interest in time, I'm going to skip over this. I slightly prefer the JW plugins for dealing with regions and stuff like that, but this also works very similarly with some other options available to you as well. So this is also quite good. But the one that's really killer for me in the Patterson set is the Copyist Helper plugin. Now, the Copyist Helper plugin actually has two pieces to it. There's a measure numbers and an instrument headers section, and this is completely unrelated to measure numbers and has to do with staff names on the parts and everything. But you can choose to process both of these tabs at once, or just a single one. Just be careful what you have set down here in the bottom left. Process current tab only on Go, or process all tabs. Just make sure that if you're only dealing with measure numbers, you want to have process current tab on Go. Now, what's really cool about this plugin, I'm just going to skip over to one of my parts here. There's some really nifty things that can be done here. So the first thing we have here is numbers with enclosures. Now, this is great because you can just list a list of numbers. So 3, 5, put a comma in between them, 6, 8. As much as you want, and when you press go, what it's going to do is it's going to put those measure numbers in enclosures in exactly those measures. Now the position here you can set however you want. So again, you can see that it kind of changed position from being underneath to being on top now. It's because I had this specific position placed for these enclosed numbers, which is really cool. Now you do have to be careful because I selected all measures in this part, and it will only put those enclosures in that part. If I wanted that to appear in all the parts, there is an option at the bottom here to process all parts. And when you check that, you also have the option to also process the score if you want. And there's even an option to process all open documents, which I suppose would be really handy if you're actually extracting parts as opposed to using linked parts. So this is really a really cool, flexible option in here as well. So that's what that does. Let me just undo this. So again, that's really cool that you can just list the numbers and have them be enclosed. You can also choose to place enclosed number on top staff only, which would be handy if you're doing this in the score. Use expressions for all enclosed numbers, which would actually just add an expression instead of enclosing the actual measure numbers, which is handy. And you can choose an alternate font if you want. Alternate meaning different than the actual font for the measure numbers. The really valuable piece of this Copyist Helper plugin for me is what goes on in the next section here, which deals with the positioning of these measure numbers. So we have sort of 3 different rows here. The mid-system measure numbers, which is actually, I guess, the show on every setting in the measure number region. It would be this position. So all of these are positions, horizontal and vertical. They relate to these positions in the position measure number sub dialog box here. So the mid-system numbers is actually the show on every position. The system start numbers is actually this position, and the multi-measure rest numbers is actually this position. So that's sort of what they're referencing there. Now for me, the thing to do is that you want to make sure that these numbers, oops, I had that set up differently before. You want to make sure that these numbers here initially match the numbers in your measure number region. That's just really just to kind of help you sort of figure out where you're starting in order to go where you want to go. And what this plugin will do is if you make a selection, you don't even have to select everything. So just select 8 bars, for example. If there's a lot of music getting in the way and these measure numbers needed to go further down, you could just go in here and in the mid-system numbers, just place a different number here, -0.6. And all those mid-system numbers will get lowered by 0.1. So this is a great way to do this. You can move as many measure numbers as you need to all at once, just depending on how many measures you have selected. You could also change the system start number position, the multi-measure rest number position if you want. There's a lot of flexibility going on here. Now, one of the cooler options here is the horizontal offset for treble and other G clef staffs, basically. If you notice, one of the issues with measure numbers at the beginning of the system, particularly when you have them set up like this, is that the measure numbers start to run into the tail of the G clef here a lot. So particularly when you get into 3-digit numbers, they're just in the way. This is never the case for a bass clef part, if I can find one here. Yeah, there's a trombone. So, it's not a problem in the bass clef parts. It's only a problem when you have a treble clef at the beginning of the system. So this Patterson plugin provides a really nifty option to horizontally offset the number at the beginning of the system whenever there's a treble clef. I mean, talk about specifics. And what's great is that you just put a value in here. Let's say, I don't know what this should be actually, negative 0.15. Let's try that. And let's see what happens here. Maybe that might have been a little bit too much. How about negative 0.1? There you go. And you can see that the numbers will actually get out of the way. And the really cool way to use this actually is to just process all parts, right? And this will only move negative 0.1 if there is a treble clef at the beginning of the staff. So process all parts go. Thank you. And you can see that as I scroll through my parts, that's the reed part, the reed 2, what is that, the horn part, the trumpet part, and then the trombone part, it gets left alone. So again, it's only processing that for the treble and other types of G clefs, which is really kind of cool in my opinion. So there is that. Actually, let's undo all of this. There's also a vertical offset for top staff on multi-staff systems. So occasionally, in my template anyway, I have the situation where I have this piano conductor score as a linked part. And these measure numbers will appear on the bottom because Finale is only allowing me one position for all linked parts, which is sort of a limitation of Finale. And what happens is that the measure numbers are in the wrong place as far as I'm concerned. I really want these on top of the system here. So you can set a vertical offset for top staff on multi-staff system. And oh gosh, I forgot what the number is here, but let's see if is it 0.5? No, not quite, but it's a little bit too high. I actually have this as a saved setting. That's another one of the cool things about this plugin, is that whatever you can set these up however you want, and then save the setting here, and it will give you some options of what to call it and all that stuff. And you can see that I have several here. And it actually even gives you the option to skip plugins dialog box when using these settings. So actually the way that I do this, and the reason I forgot what that is because I've never had to do this once I initially set it up. All I have to do is select all, and in the plugins menu for the Patterson plugins, it will actually create new plugins for this. So for me, all I got to do is choose JL template multistaff parts, and you can see that it will move those measure numbers to exactly where I had predetermined them a long time ago and completely forgot about it right now, but that's exactly how that works. Let's go back here, see what else is in here. So that's the vertical offset for top staff on multi-staff systems. And center range under multi-measure rest makes a lot of sense. Use expressions. So bear with me 1 second as I set something up here. Let me go to a part. And I'm just going to create very quickly another, maybe I'll fast forward through this. Okay, cool. So what I just did there was I set up a measure mapping where I'm going 1 through 4, 4A through 4D, 5 through 8, and through the end of the piece, right? Now, there is a issue with the way that Finale handles multi-measure rests sometimes, where if these bars are empty, this is an empty template, but if these bars actually were empty, and I created a multi-measure rest out of these 8 bars here, it's going to show me that the range here is bars 1 through 8, which is completely incorrect. You can see it's actually bars 1 through 4D. Finale just does not have a way of dealing with this natively, so it does create this incorrect problem. But what's great about that Patterson plugin, Copyist Helper, is this option here for center ranges under multi-measure rest. Use expressions. Now, this is the killer app right here, because when you check this and press go, what the plugin will do, if you can see that, is it created an expression that lists this measure number range correctly. So now it says bars 1 through 4, 4A through 4D. And this is an expression using the same font, using the same style, in the same position that the multi-measure range was listed. And you can see the original range has been pushed out of the way and it's hidden, so that will never print. So this is really great because this solves this huge problem of not, the measure ranges being incorrect when it spans multiple measure regions. So, this alone is sort of worth its weight in gold. Just there's a couple other options here. You can adjust for time key and repeat. Sometimes if there's a time signature here, the bar number will be sort of to the right, but if you want it kind of still lined up with the bar line, adjusting for time key or repeat will put it in the correct spot. And you can also choose to center the number under the left bar line as well. So, this is in my opinion, this is sort of a killer plugin. That's this middle section is definitely worth it by itself. So yeah, so that's the Patterson Copyists Helper plugin. I highly recommend it. And again, there's a link for the website to get that in the footer of my website, as well as the JW plugin as well. So yeah, so there you go. So that is two really important plugins for measure numbers, in my opinion. I highly recommend you get both of those and play around with them, because they will save you a lot of time when dealing with measure numbers. Come back for the next lesson. I'm going to be talking about some advanced options about showing the other number styles, including time and other. So we can actually put in the elapsed time as a measure number, which is kind of cool. So come back for that. And yeah, so I'll see you then. Thanks for watching, and I will see you soon on the next measure number matrix video.